Afternoon. I'm excited and honored to be here with you all today and hosting this panel discussion, our town hall, Meet the Funders. If we haven't met already, I'm Terry Hughes. I'm the CEO here at CNM, and I've been here since 2016. And at the end of this time, we're going to let our panelists go a little early and have 15 minutes where my team and I will be available on this event. And if you have any development related questions that you want to talk with us about. So this conversation is going to work like this. Make sure you're muted unless you're speaking, and you can send questions or resources to Catherine or Marissa in the chat. And out of respect for the panelists and their being able to attend to their words of wisdom, please, if you wouldn't mind, hold off from privately chatting them during the event, and feel free to connect with them afterwards. Catherine's going to be providing their organization's contact info in the chat, so you can do a follow-up email in our follow-up email that will be sent out tomorrow. And so also, since much of fundraising and grant writing is about building relationships and connections, you're welcome to add your LinkedIn URL in the chat to connect with panelists after the event or each other. We are recording this session, and any events and resources presented today will also be included in that follow-up email that is coming tomorrow. We'll have about an hour of panelist Q&A, and then we'll open it up to your questions, and we will be looking forward to hearing what's on your mind. But go ahead and put anything in the chat that you are curious about. Before we get started with today's topics, let me tell you a couple quick updates from CNM. In celebration of Black History Month during February, CNM will be offering our equity workshops free for CNM members and a discounted price of $20 for non-members. And starting in March, the majority of our DEI workshops are going to be offered at a reduced rate of $20 for members and $40 for non-members. And these workshops have a max capacity of about 25 attendees. So if you're interested, I'd encourage you to go ahead and get signed up or get your team members signed up. Catherine's going to be adding links into the chat about those events, so watch for those. Also, many thanks to the Frist Foundation for their long-standing support of match grants. We are able again to offer match grant scholarships to member organizations that have budgets under $2 million, and that these nonprofit scholarships give our member organizations up to 75% discount. It depends on your budget size, on 3 workshops per year. So if your organization qualifies and hasn't taken advantage for 2022, check out the link and come to some of our workshops. We've actually had 3 in-person workshops the last 2 weeks, so it's very exciting to see people in the hallways again. One of the member benefits that we added last year gives current CNM members free access to Grant Station. So check out the link in the chat to learn more about Grant Station. It's a way of searching for available funding. You can search by topic, by region, and that kind of thing. It's really a cool thing. And you don't have to come into our office to do it like our old system. You can get a URL. If you have questions about it, please email our team at membership@cnm.org for additional support. All right, announcements over. Today's topic. So, on to today's topic. COVID-19 has introduced nonprofits to unique challenges as we strive to keep employees, external stakeholders, and the community members we serve safe, informed, and connected. As funders evolve their grant making to meet the sector's needs, many of their program interests and application processes have evolved as well. So we're really excited to hear their perspectives on nonprofit investment strategies, planned giving, and how funding priorities are evolving through the pandemic. Before we introduce our 4 amazing panelists, a quick reminder for those of you who just joined the chat that you can send questions join the call, send questions or resources to Catherine or Marissa in the chat. And again, please hold off on private messaging the panelists during the event. So I'm very excited to introduce Herbert Brown, Community and Citizenship Director at Turner Construction Company. In his role, Herbert leads economic impact strategies to support underrepresented business enterprises within the construction industry. In addition to economic development, he's also responsible for leading workforce development and community outreach and engagement for Turner's Nashville office. Thank you for joining us, Herbert, and I can't wait to learn more about Turner Construction.
Thank you.
Up next, please welcome Nia Moon, Corporate Philanthropy Manager at Jackson National Life Insurance Company. Nia joined Jackson's corporate philanthropy team in 2018 to help advance company efforts to engage communities where its associates live and work. In her role, she is responsible for Jackson's corporate giving and employee volunteer programs in the Nashville area. She enjoys working with nonprofit organizations to positively impact her hometown. Nia, we're so pleased to have you with us today. And third, I'm happy to introduce Terry Vo, External Affairs Manager at Comcast. In her role, Terry oversees government relations, community investments, and partnerships throughout Tennessee. She also manages special projects and programs that support digital equity through unique partnerships and enterprise-wide initiatives. And she was recently named a Woman of Influence by the Nashville Business Journal. And if any of you know her, that is so appropriate. Congratulations. Also, she was one of Nashville's 30 under 30 and Nashville Business Journal's top 40 under 40. So we celebrate you, Terry, and we're thrilled to have you back in all the various ways that you help CNM do our work better.
My pleasure. Thanks, Terry.
And finally, please welcome our newest partner to the table, Burton Williams. He's a director at Trustcore International. And I'm excited to announce that Trustcore has just confirmed that they will sponsor our Salute to Excellence CEO of the Year Award this year. So Burton, we're happy to have you and thank you for that. Before joining Trustcore International in 2020, Burton was the Associate Vice President for Planned and Complex Giving and Associate Dean in the College of Business for Lipscomb University. And the majority of his career has been spent with nonprofits. He's currently serving on the board as past president of the Financial Planning Association of Middle Tennessee and the board of the Planned Giving Council of Middle Tennessee. Burton, your wisdom and experience, we're glad to have you here on this panel today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
So help me welcome these talented leaders who represent the heart of Nashville's philanthropic sector. As a reminder, if you have questions for these panelists, add them to the group chat and we'll do our very best to get them answered. So first question, this is for Herbert, Nia, and Terry. How would you sum up your community engagement strategy? What are the top causes or impact areas your company is investing in right now? Herbert, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. But before I get started, just definitely want to say thanks, Terry, for having me today and the rest of the panelists. Really appreciate all the work that you do here in Nashville and just the region. So appreciative of your leadership. So thank you. But Turner Construction, we are builders. So, we really focus on the communities that we build in and how we can be great community partners. We really focus our philanthropic efforts through 4 strategic pillars, if you will. So economic development, workforce development, youth engagement, and of course, community service. And when I say community service, really focusing on just opportunities where, our team, of course, we're builders, so we like to use our hands and get dirty. But if there's an opportunity for us to, come out and build a project and really work in conjunction with youth or staff from a specific nonprofit, that's generally where we like to put our efforts.
Great, thank you, Herbert. Nia, how about you? And what is your, summing up your community engagement strategy and what top causes or impact areas are you investing in right now? Just as a reminder.
Sure. Thank you so much, Terry. And thank you, everyone. I'm just pleased to have this opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. So first, just a little bit about Jackson. For those of you who are not aware, we're a financial services firm offering different products designed to help Americans prepare for retirement. So we're known as a top seller of annuities, and our customers tend to be financial advisors and other professionals serving their clients, many of us. Our mission or our purpose is to help people achieve financial freedom for life. So we're more than 60 years old. And as of last September, we became an independent publicly traded company. So lots of changes happening in Jackson. But as far as our corporate philanthropy strategy goes, I would say that overall, we seek to engage our associates and our company in the community by investing our time, our experience, and our money with partners who positively impact the places where our associates live and work. And so a lot of those partners, again, I see some of you are on the call today. So for us, those places where we focus our efforts are in our office locations. So that's in Lansing, Michigan, that's our corporate headquarters, in Chicago, Illinois, and of course, Franklin, Tennessee. We aim to make an impact locally through our corporate giving programs. And so that's primarily through our community grants. We like to engage our associates in our employee volunteerism program, which is affectionately called Jackson in Action. And we also seek to build awareness about our company through our community sponsorships. So we invest locally in programs that strengthen families and increase economic opportunities. I would say those are our charitable focus areas or pillars. And these areas, they guide all of our efforts. And a lot of our contributions are driven by our associates. So with our community grants program, eligible nonprofit organizations have the opportunity to apply for funding twice a year with us. Today actually is the deadline for our first cycle of the year. So if you miss today, you will have another opportunity later in the fall. In terms of the top causes of investment, I would say over the past couple of years, our top areas of investment, they're not only influenced by our charitable focus areas that I just mentioned, but I would say also by the issues that we've all been facing as a community over the past couple of years, the negative impacts of the pandemic and the natural disasters that we've been facing in Nashville, the lack of affordable housing, and then also the renewed attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've invested in financial counseling and emergency assistance programs, and we funded programs to help people stay in their homes and to age safely in their homes as well. And then we're also looking at our efforts more closely or with more intention through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens.
All right, you've got a lot going on. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Terry, tell us about Comcast.
Sounds great. So Comcast, we are a global media and technology company that has two primary businesses, Comcast Cable, which is who I represent today, and NBC Universal. So Comcast Cable is one of the largest video, high-speed internet, and phone providers to residential customers. You all will know under the Xfinity brand. And then we also provide these services to businesses under Comcast Business. And we also offer home security, and we have become recently a wireless provider. So with that, there's a lot going on. And so for us, when we talk in terms of community investment, we've actually wrapped this up and we discuss this annually, but recently with COVID, we have created it and it's called Project Up. So it is our $1 billion commitment to advancing digital equity and to build a future of unlimited possibilities. So what does that mean, right? So we are committing $1 billion over 10 years to reach 50 million people and to create 1,000+ community partnerships. So with that, with the pillars, we're focused on connectivity. We're focused on skills and opportunities. We are focused on creativity and storytelling. We are focused on entrepreneurialism and volunteerism. And more specifically, we also have our foundation grant arm. And with that, our focus areas are digital inclusion, digital exploration, and digital skills in the workforce.
I was furiously trying to write all of that down and I didn't get there, but that's a lot. All three of you have shared a lot of information that's already really interesting and valuable. And I'd like to turn to Burton. Burton, you have a really unique background in the sector. You're working with a corporation now that is a funder, and you've worked in the local nonprofit sector a lot. So share a little bit of your experience and your work, and in addition, touch on Trustcore and what it is and some of the pro bono work that you guys do.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. And again, it's great to see everybody's face. It's so good to communicate. I mean, to communicate and to collaborate with our community. So thank you. Yeah, so I came out of college and went to work in the financial sector in Charlotte, North Carolina. Went to work for Interstate Johnson Lane, kind of like J.C. Bradford. So I was a certified financial planner right out of college. I felt the call. So I know a lot of you people have felt the call to serve. Trustcore, we're wired for service here. I'm a service-oriented person. And so I got into higher ed about 4 or 5 years after college. Served at another institution in Lipscomb for 10 years, and I'm still serving. I've always been working with folks that really love what they see, and I try to put pieces of the puzzle together. We're all kind of puzzle or matchmakers. We see the needs out there, and we see the funds, and we put them together. So we have some really generous clients here. And what we started finding at Trustcore, first of all, our partners and our employees, we give time and effort to over 62 nonprofits in the Middle Tennessee community. So what we were seeing, and because our sector talks about investing assets, a lot of nonprofits were underserved and overpriced as far as managing their money. And so that's something we wanted to fix. And so we're a very value conscious investment manager for nonprofits. And we started in 2020. Some of you know Matt Deeb, he's now at the Frist Foundation. He was with us and he formally started Trustcore Institutional. So we've been working with nonprofits for a couple of decades, but we now have a concerted effort to serve the nonprofit community. So I'm really excited. I just sort of fell into this. I left Lipscomb. We have 1,000 employees. We have 50 here, and learning fintech and starting, Nia knows this, there's so much to learn and navigate in fintech. And so here I am, and all of a sudden this opportunity came and I was like, oh my goodness, God is good. He has put me right in the right place again to try to make an impact and have an impact with folks. So we're just kind of starting our corporate giving, some of our corporate giving. Most of that's done through our partners and our employees. And so when I say 62, that's not Trustcore company, that's all of our employees. And we try to help them along in that. Terry, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to stop there. There may be some other specific questions you want to ask me about parlaying from higher ed back into, we used to call ourselves the good witches and nonprofits, and now I'm for profit. So I don't know what I'm called now, but it's great to sponsor the CEO.
You're called a unique individual
Unicorn.
who can see both sides of and understands what all of our audience is going through. A unicorn, says Catherine.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So Nia and Terry, I have a question that I'd like to hear from each of you on. With some of your recent grantees in mind, what are some projects that stand out as a great investment? And Nia, let's go with you first, if you're ready.
Yes, so I would have to say we were honored to fund a project with Rebuilding Together Nashville. It's their phase 3 of their Bordeaux initiative. And so it's a program where they've been making critical home repairs for low or fixed income homeowners in North Nashville with the goal to help those current residents avoid displacement due to gentrification. So they've been working on this initiative since 2019. So it's also been financially supported by the Barnes Housing Fund and other great organizations. And we're glad to add our funds to the pot to help them continue that work. We've had an existing relationship with Rebuilding Together Nashville. We've done some volunteer support and worked on some other repairs with some other projects in other communities. And so we were just really glad to continue this partnership. And we had the opportunity to volunteer with them last year, clearing brush from a veteran's home in North Nashville last fall. So I think an example of a great investment because we were able to activate and include our employees in the relationship. There's that funding opportunity, and it was a way to really deepen the relationship while also addressing a real issue in our community at this time.
Great, great. That sounds like a wonderful example. Terry, what about you? You tell us about a project that stands out as a great investment.
Definitely. So I think it would be, we can't talk about investment and funding without talking about COVID, right? So because of the pandemic, small business owners and especially people of color and women, were some of the hardest hit businesses, right? So we're looking at between February through April 2020, the number of active Black owned businesses declined by 41%. Like when I say that, it's just so jarring. Latinx owned businesses declined by 32%. Asian owned businesses dropped by 25%. And we talk about the general population, it was 21%. So our company decided to do something about that. So when I was talking about one of our pillars, we focused on entrepreneurship. So we started the Comcast RISE program. We started this in COVID. And RISE stands for representation, investment, strength, and empowerment. And what's really cool about this is it was for businesses to go and apply. And what's exciting is that it was not just last year, you can still apply. And one thing I'm so proud of is we have had several businesses in Middle Tennessee become winning recipients. One is in my neighborhood. And one thing I love is that, right, like I have no oversight in the program. It is up at HQ in Philadelphia. And so when we find out who the winners are, it's always really exciting. So when I found out that Punches and Bunches in Chestnut Hill was a recipient, it was so exciting. And they had a tech makeover. And to know that my company, that Comcast, was helping someone who's a small business owner here was really, really impactful. And so there are 5 different award types, right? There's consulting, there's media, there's creative production. You might need a commercial, right? And those are expensive. We do the tech makeover, which Tremaine can talk about. And then there's also monetary grants. So with that, what I love right now is that marketing services and the tech makeover applications are actually open right now through Friday, June 17th. So if you know a small business, owned by a person of color or a woman, please have them apply. The website has all the instructions. It needs to be 51% owned. I'm not going to go over all the details, but that's for you all, comcastrise.com/apply. And to me, that was something that we were doing that is investing in, our businesses that really are so important in each of our communities. So it's been really, really, really amazing to be a part of that.
That is fascinating, and something that came, an example of a pivot or an evolution that came up during the pandemic to really fit a need. I think I know the answer, but are nonprofits, minority-led nonprofits, eligible for this?
So at this time, I have asked, and like with churches, like they're not eligible, and it needs to be a business. So I am like asking on that part. Trust me.
I'm
but
sure you are. I do trust you implicitly.
Yes, I'm always advocating for our nonprofits. And one thing I will tell you that we were able to do. So, for example, we had our Comcast Rise, and then our Comcast Business decided that, wow, this is really great. We want to do it for our local markets. And what we did was, so we had another grant called Together Towards Tomorrow, and I worked with my nonprofits. So with the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, I asked them, what are some of your clients? Do you know some businesses that need help? It was amazing because then they submitted about, 10 applicants, and together, we talked through them, and then my team, we were able to decide that locally and give back. So that's where it's so critical. You're like, you all know the individuals. You are the trusted institutions, that corporations that we need to really bridge these areas of help, and where the contributions and where there is resources. So that's one thing I felt like we were kind of answering that when Comcast Rise was not directly for nonprofits.
Super, super. I am going to go back over to Nia for a second, and just I'm going rogue here, guys. I noticed that Jared Ham with Rebuilding Nashville together is in the house. And Jared, I'm putting you on the spot, but would you unmute and maybe tell us what you did to make this such a successful partnership? Because I think while it's great to hear the success story from the funder side, we're the ones that have to figure out how to make it successful as the grantee. So I'm taking a risk here, Jared. Would you talk to us?
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't planning on talking, but I can pitch in a little bit. So Rebuilding Together Nashville, we do, like she said, home repairs, and primarily for folks who are older adults, people with disabilities, and veterans. And Jackson's actually been a partner with us for a few years now. They've come out and done several projects with us and been really great partners. So they're people that we look for to do a project with us once a year. And so that's kind of the one piece of it. But then we also applied for their grant funding this last year to help finish up some of the projects that we needed some additional funding for. So I think, yeah, on our end, it was just building that relationship over the course of the last few years. It was before I got there. So I think once we had that, the grant application, that's easy. You just fill in the forms and write what you know. But yeah, I think it's just about that relationship.
Super. Well, thank you for letting me put you on the spot and for sharing. It sounds like we all know this, but it's really instructive to hear relationship. And the fact that you had built those relationships through volunteering early on, before you went for the cash grant, it just solidified you had the relationship. And I'm going to guess it was a no-brainer, Nia. I don't know.
Yes, and the work that they do is just it really ties in well with our giving priorities. I mentioned economic opportunities as a pillar, and underneath that is long-term housing. So part of that is helping people prepare and be on a path towards home ownership. But then the other piece of it, having that basic housing is so important. It's a basic need. So again, what they're doing in North Nashville and just in general, it's really important, and it's important to helping people maintain the financial stability that they need.
Super. Sounds like a win-win-win. Very good. Thank you, Jared. You're a good sport. All right, Burton, let's talk about budgeting and program forecasting, because that's a really important part of the grant application process. So what are some tips you can give to nonprofits to help them get their finances ready for grant applications?
So one of the things, it's I guess it's more of a Southern colloquialism, but some of us have heard that pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And so you don't want to be too well endowed with your financing and then trying to ask for money. You want to show a definite need. You want to be nimble. You want to be able to show some reserves, but not too many reserves. You all know this: SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time related. And so you just have to be extremely specific. I learned a lot in just a short amount of time I worked with Matt Deeb here at Trustcore. But there's pro forma, performance, and they got to be realistic. And you've got to have some sense of success and what it looks like, because I think that's what I've heard from other funders is I've got to see what they consider success and see if that meets our definition of success and what we're trying to accomplish. So, that again is going to translate into financial most all the time, because you're needing funding. So Terry, I think that would be a little bit, our motto here is illuminate the possibilities. That's what you want to do in your grant applications. You want to illuminate what's possible. Not so much what you've done in the past, but the historical context of the past, put it with what you want to do in the future.
So paint that picture with your finances as well as your narrative, that illuminating.
Weave them together as much as possible.
Well, that's a great segue into the question I have here for Herbert, who also is known as a great storyteller. So Herbert, in addition to the obvious mission-related return on investment that your funding brings, can you share some examples of excellent stewardship? And then I have a follow-up.
Sure. I mean, when you think about stewardship, you're thinking about the relationship and how you can show the outcomes of the investment. So, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's just following up with a phone call, I think it's important to really focus and show, you know, donors, investors, the outcomes, and really showing, step by step the process that went into play to get to those outcomes. I think from my experience being at the chamber and now here with Turner Construction, being able to see both sides I've been fortunate to see that. But I think generally, really showing those outcomes and how you get there, I think that's an excellent way to be a great steward of an investment.
And then the follow-up is, how can nonprofits make you feel great about investing in them and telling your story along with their story and driving excellent brand awareness? I know what I didn't say in the introduction of Herbert is he was at the chamber for I don't know how long, but a while, and did the sponsorship work there. So
Yeah.
you see it now from both sides.
Yeah, and I promise you, Pencil is not paying me to say this, but generally just following up with a phone call. So just to give you a peek inside of my days, yesterday I was at Cambridge High School at the Construction and Architecture Academy, which is, Pencil and the academies in Nashville do exceptional work. So really glad to partner with Pencil there. But maybe about 10 minutes before I jumped on this call, Esther Bailey Bass with Pencil gave me a phone call and just said, "Hey, how did yesterday go?" And, I know with COVID, everybody's been virtual. So it was a fantastic career fair that was in person. Everyone had their mask on, but just saying, "Hey, how did it go?" Whether it's a phone call, an email, a text message, just again, developing a relationship, constant communication. You can never over communicate. Again, at the chamber, I would often just, send emails, phone calls, text messages. And I just wanted investors and funders to know that we're gratefully appreciative of your investment, but also, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what this looks like. Do you have any questions? Do you want to attend? Is there an opportunity for you to be involved in whatever it is, in addition to those benefits that you receive, but just giving them, the utmost engagement opportunities, and just, again, developing those relationships are important.
Super. Thank you. Well, let's continue a little bit on communication with Nia and Terry getting to chime in. What kind of communication do you expect from a grantee throughout the year? And if you have examples of great or not so great reporting, you're welcome to share that too. And Nia, will you kick us off?
Sure. So I guess in addition to what Herbert was sharing, I would say with potential grantees, good communication begins even before submitting a grant application. So it's great when you can send an email or set up a quick call to discuss your needs, or a program that you would like us to fund. I feel like doing this ahead of submitting your application gives us the opportunity to provide any guidance or answer questions about our grants program. Some organizations have reached out before applying to confirm our focus areas and giving guidelines, because sometimes there are nuances and different interpretations. So appreciate that opportunity. And then, some may ask, what's a reasonable ask for their application? So again, communication, I believe, begins before application is submitted. But after an organization has received a grant award from us, we do ask for a brief progress report in 6 months, just to let us know how you're doing. Just a few short questions assessing, where are you in meeting your goals? If you decide to talk about our partnership, together, we just appreciate a heads up. So again, going back to an email or a quick phone call, that's always helpful. We love to partner with you in amplifying your organization's mission. So we just look for those opportunities to partner in those efforts. I would say maybe some examples of not so great reporting or stewardship would just involve not hearing from you. And it goes back to relationships. Like if an award is received, just a simple acknowledgement, or just, again, it's just nice to stay in contact because you're doing such important work. And I know we're seeking to make impact in the community. So let's stay in touch and in lockstep with each other.
I just did the wrong thing. Thank you, Nia. Terry, talk about communication, what you expect from a grantee throughout the year. If you have examples of great and not so great communication and reporting, let us know.
Sure. So just to add on what Herbert and Nia are saying, very similar. So with us, if you become a grantee, we actually have like a program you would go in. So you would go into our system. We use Smart Simple, and you would have your report, and they let you know when the deadline is. And so I typically, if I don't hear from my grantees, I will reach out. But I'm telling you, being proactive is always like a great thing. Like I know all of us are juggling 50 different things at once. So it's really nice whenever we can schedule the meeting, a week or two in advance just to go over like everything. And, if they're worried about something, we can answer that on the front end. So I always love that. We have a process. So ours is probably a little bit different. And I think just to add to what Herbert said, having the calls, I think sometimes it shouldn't just be focused on like the request for funding and then getting the funding, but like building that relationship, inviting us, as corporations to come and speak like at your event. Like we do other things as well that maybe people don't know about. And I can speak for myself, when we have our Internet Essentials program to connect, families who need an affordable high-speed internet. I want to do that. I want to come out and speak. So I think it's really important to also learn about like your corporations that you want funding from and what they can also provide minus just grants or sponsorship dollars, but how there's actual, benefit for those that you serve in the community. So I would think about that, and then I think telling our story is important. For example, of course, I can talk about Comcast all day long, but, if Leah or, Keith or Mary, they talk about Comcast or something that we've done, it's going to go way further. And you all know that too. Your board, of directors talking about your organization goes so much further. And so I think those are really, really just additional things I would suggest. Great
tips. Thanks, Terry. All right, Burton, I'm excited to hear your responses on this next question because it's what we all need to know. Every nonprofit needs to have some cash in reserve, and you already kind of alluded to this in an earlier, but some cash in reserve to respond to an unexpected downturn or an opportunity. But is there a golden number that every organization should maintain a certain percentage? Number one. And secondly, any tips on how we build reserves would be most welcome.
Yeah, and before I answer that, can I just touch on Herbert and Nia and Terry about stewardship?
You certainly may, yes.
So I think, first of all, the definition of stewardship is a manager of someone else's possessions. So I think if we have that understanding going into it, and when we get a gift, think about it as someone else's, and you want to be accountable and you want to manage it well. And then, I like the idea of if you get a brand new grant from a brand new funder, have someone from your board write a letter and thank them, or have you have the president, but another volunteer, because they're going to hear from you a lot. And sometimes you won't get the grant. And when I was at Lipscomb, there were some of those times. And so we would always follow up and say, what could we have done different? Help coach us. We're coachable. Show you're coachable. Anyway, let me move on. So I would say typically what we say is 4 to 8 months on reserve. I mean, that's like the golden number, but it also depends on how much of your operations come out of your reserve. So if your revenue is such that it is overfunding or at least funding everything you do, that's okay. That's good. We had a pandemic, so a lot of things change. You know, when I was at Lipscomb during that pandemic, we pivoted quickly to say, okay, which donors have donor advised funds? Because they've already given the money away and it's just sitting there. And so we've got to go ask them for those funds. And so you have to pivot sometimes. But I guess investing for the long term, you have to make the decision. And this is the number one question we answer when we're talking to new clients about investing funds, their nonprofit dollars, is how much are you going to need from your long-term investment portfolio to fund your operations? Are you going to keep all the cash and you're going to manage your own cash and we're going to invest for the future? Really, you just need to leave it alone for 5 years if you're going to get any headway. Okay, so you've got to make that decision first. The other thing is spending policy. You know, and a lot of you all know this, after UMIFA and UPMIFA, there's now a total return type of thing, and you can invade principal depending on rolling averages. So first of all, I would say if you're going to have a spending policy, use a 3 or 5 year rolling average, because if you had $1 million, then you had $500,000 during the pandemic, and you tried to spend 25% of or 4% of 500,000 was a lot less than 4% of $1 million. So you need to look at the trailing average. So that's just kind of a mathematical type of thing. We're seeing that, you know, like Harvard and some of these really big endowments, they're now even dipping below 4% spending. And I'm not a fan of that. I feel like you need to get the money out and get it working in your different programs. So it's gone from about 5.5 to 5 to 4.5. Most nonprofits are looking at a 4% spending rate, which interestingly enough, that's what they're calling on for retirement. So when everybody retires, it's the same thing. You take 4% of your nest egg, you spend that every year, you should be perfectly fine. There's also ways to protect the downside, but if you're going to grow it all, you're going to be in equities. And so you've got to have a spending policy and you have to have an investment policy statement. And that's one of the things we do for people. We'll provide samples and we'll work with them to create an investment policy statement. And in that, you end up having, you know, who you are, the theme of what you will invest in, what you won't invest in, and those should match. I mean, there's some things, you know, if they're ESG funds or, you know, faith-based funds, you can do some of that, and you need to know going into it. So, lot there. Sorry about that, but I'd say 4 to 8 months. If you're going to invest for the long term, mean it. Keep what you need, invest the rest. Don't touch it for 5 years, and you should be in pretty good shape.
Good. We heard it here first. So thank you. Those are good tips. Those are good tips. All right. The last question before we go into Q&A is, I want everybody to answer, and you can this is going to be the fun one. As you look into your crystal ball, how are you seeing recent events change philanthropy for the future, change the future of philanthropy, I guess I should say. And what can we expect to see within the next year? I mean, we can look crystal ball, long haul, short term, next year. And how can we best prepare our organizations for these changes? Terry, why don't you lead off? She says no. You've got a crystal ball, don't you?
Oh goodness. No, I definitely don't have a crystal ball. For Lunar New Year, I sent everyone fortunes. So no crystal ball here, but goodness, I will tell you. So, right. I mean, when we're talking about trends for, you know, the future, I really see, we've seen it during COVID, right? Where companies are standing with their employees, you know, we're pursuing purpose over passion. And I think we are all kind of figuring out like what is the next big thing. Like in terms of, I will tell you, for volunteerism, for our company right now, we are still not doing any in-person volunteerism until like further notice. So we've had to pivot and we keep pushing, you know, virtual volunteerism, but we all know it's not quite the same. And there are different forms of that. So with me, I still feel like I'm having to turn on my creative like hat and find different things that will interest our employees, keep them engaged, and make them feel that they're still making a difference in our communities. So I will say on here, if you all have like a virtual volunteer opportunity for us, please send it my way. I would really, really love it because I think it's so important. I think this is why we need panels like this, because I can sit at my desk and think all day long what might be good for my employees and my colleagues, but really it's you all answering and letting us know what the needs are so that we can provide these and close that gap. And I think that's why I love the opportunity to speak on these panels. But yeah, I mean, in the future, I hope that we'll be back together in person and, getting to really do the work together. So.
All right, who wants to go next? Nia, you unmuted. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I guess I'll jump in. This is a tough one, Terry. And I agree a lot with Terry Bowe, what she was saying in terms of us having to adapt and adjust because of the pandemic. Obviously, with the pandemic, there's been a significant impact on education, on the economy in general, how we work. And there are implications for our company culture, just from a volunteerism standpoint, when a lot of us are moving to this hybrid work environment. So, typically, at least on the corporate philanthropy side, we kind of serve as kind of informal and employee volunteer managers, if you will. And in that kind of work, we are kind of like the purveyors of culture building within the organization. So it's kind of like, how do we adapt in this environment? I feel like the renewed attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion presents an opportunity to work with employee resource groups more intentionally and purposefully within your organization. If you have those, say like, how can we work with them to be more impactful with our volunteerism programs, with our grant making? Because they are also contributing to the culture of the organization as well. So just so much out there. One of the big areas that we fund is in the student achievement area too. So because of how education has taken a lot of hits, I guess, and parents and students are adapting, I think there's a lot of opportunity to fund in that area, and then also in childcare too. So it's so much, but we'll power through, we'll find a way, we'll work with you all on the call and other organizations and together collaboratively to address all these issues.
Lots of issues. Childcare it affects so many people in so many ways, and it is a crisis. It sure is a crisis. All right, Herbert, you got a crystal ball on you?
Listen, I'm touching the crystal ball and I'm looking, but in all seriousness, just echoing Terry and Nia, I think there are some challenges that were presented with, that are being presented with COVID. But I think just from a different perspective, I know internally it has allowed our team to, get creative as to how we engage with each other, but also in the community. One fun fact about Turner, I know everybody was watching the Super Bowl this past weekend, but we actually were the builders for SoFi Stadium where the Super Bowl was held. So, I've been able to connect with my colleagues in Southern California and just talk through, what was that like in terms of building just a huge project like that, specifically for the community. Like, how did you engage the community? What type of different organizations did you work with? And just having that opportunity and experience to just engage, where I think normally, say if there was no COVID and we weren't on Zoom, you kind of get busy and kind of locked into like your local market. But I think it's definitely allowed, our team to be creative and innovative in how we go about just implementing different programs around workforce, economic development, but really workforce. Workforce is a huge challenge. We know that, in our industry, there will be a ton of people that will retire soon. So really focusing on how we can provide, the resources and education to really the future generation. So, opportunities to engage and partner and collaborate with nonprofits here in the region around workforce is imperative for Turner. And, generally, if anyone is on and wants to collaborate, you have my information. Would love to meet you and kind of talk through what that looks like. But yeah, I think just generally with technology being the way it is, if you shift your perspective, which I think a lot of us have during this time, it's really allowed us to be more creative, more innovative, and just partner, with organizations, companies that traditionally we may not have thought about if we didn't speak to our colleagues in another market that may have similar companies and organizations. So again, echoing Terry and Nia, there were a ton of challenges, but my crystal ball tells me that things will get better, and the workforce challenges that specifically we're facing, we're ready to collaborate with the community and figure out how can we get over this hurdle and provide students and adult learners the resources that they need to get gainful and sustainable employment.
Great crystal ball there. And for the long term, the students, and then the next year, let's get some of the adults trained in workforce development. So, all right, you heard Herbert. If you've got that, call him. All right, Burton, what's going on in your crystal ball?
Wow,
what are you seeing for the future of philanthropy?
It's tough to hold a whole lot, to add a whole lot. I'm going to concentrate on all the positives that came out of the last couple of years. I'm very positive. I really feel like we're going to get back to, it won't ever be normal. I don't think, again, it'll be a new normal. And it shouldn't be normal. Let's be honest. We've had some very good growth opportunities. We've had a lot of vine pruning. We've cut off the dead branches. We've got new growth going on. I can tell you from our senior community, they're a lot more savvy than we gave them credit for, and they can Zoom and they can Teams, and like half of our clients are perfectly fine Zooming from their home and not coming into the office. And so we were glad we all had all that figured out 2 months before the pandemic. We're a lot more, we're not as, I know we see rigidity in society, but I think individually, we give some folks passes that we didn't used to. We're a little bit more flexible because we all had to be flexible, whether we wanted to be flexible or not. And so I think that's good. I think we're having different conversations than we ever have in the community with funders, with businesses. I can speak to education a lot because I've studied that, but industrialized education, I'm not going to say it's broken. There's a lot of challenges, but I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in education, because I think that with so many different agencies working, the government working, private folks working, we're going to see some things there. I think some innovations we haven't seen since industrialized education came into being. And so I was just looking the other day, one of the indicators from the pandemic is there was actually 3% of students nationwide were homeschooled, and now it's 11. That's huge in 2 years. So what opportunities does that bring for agencies? And that's a whole new growth area. So they're just trying to see those new areas that we can latch onto and we can connect with. It's going to be very interesting. So Herbert, much better crystal ball than I had. But I just think that, golly, if we can concentrate on the positive, everybody, the negative, I hope, will start to take care of itself some. We're still going to have to work really hard. But let's keep a positive attitude while we're trying to get back to whatever the new normal is.
There's my glass half full friend right there. Thank you, Burton. Thank you. Well, we're getting some questions from the audience, and so I'm going to move on to that. So from Harriet Shifton at Gilda's Club, do you prefer to fund deep or wide, meaning a lot of one-time grants or select long-term partners? And I realize that we haven't I didn't really specifically ask you to tell us about your grant cycles. Some of you mentioned it a little bit, but maybe you might talk about that when you answer that question. Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll just jump right in and
Jump in, Herbert.
answer that question quickly. But really thinking about just those pillars that I mentioned. We recently released our 2021 DE&I impact report, and we're hyper focused on those pillars, if you will. So considering that, we would prefer to kind of establish relationships with nonprofits and really develop strong intentional relationships, as opposed to spreading our investments just across the board, but just be very intentional and specific with again, workforce development, community service type projects, economic development, and youth engagement, really being specific and intentional there. I hope that answers your question, Harriet.
Yeah, I think it does. Anybody else have a feeling on that?
Yes, I'll go, Terry.
Okay.
So for Comcast, it depends on what it is, right? So for example, I would say our Comcast grants, Comcast Rise grants would be a one-time, you would be a one-time recipient of that. But for us, I would definitely say that with our foundation grants, with our digital literacy grants, we are really looking for long-term partners. We often, you can see, I mean, you can look back in our history, it's once we start funding, an organization, we want to continue that. And so that's been really great. And I think it just depends on the different projects. If it was pre-COVID, with our Comcast Cares Day, they would change all the time because it allowed us to help and partner with many more organizations, because everything else that we do is very specifically focused, right? That when I talked about under Project Up, and then our Comcast Foundation grants are invitation only. So I know, with NIA and other organizations, they may be different. Ours is not an open system where we would open the window. We really work with our partners and have a relationship. And so it's a little bit of both, to be honest.
Super. Nia or Burton? Nia?
Yeah, I would say for Jackson, in terms of our local grant making, those are one-time grants. But that said, I would say that through this program, we're able oftentimes introduced to newer partners. That's our first introduction to them, actually, with their grant application. And we go on to, in many cases, build a relationship. We're able to volunteer with them, and we might give them grants, in successful, in subsequent years. So, so with that program, I'd say we have short-term, and it kind of leads to longer-term relationships. We do funding through our community sponsorships, and I would say that's actually where those longer-term partners receive funding from us through event and program sponsorships.
Super, super. Burton, anything to add?
I would just say again, being aware of the needs. I mean, that's one reason we're helping to fund organizations through the Center for Nonprofit Management, so that we can get to know more of the community, and then we can do the matchmaking between our clients and Trustcore and the community. And so again, it's just getting to know you all. This has been really helpful to me, and I can't wait to follow up and just to do more research in all your organizations. I'm gonna have a lot of fun the next couple of weeks.
So there's some great organizations on this
Absolutely.
call. That's terrific. Harriet, thank you for that great question. From Melissa Hauk at the Heritage Foundation. Hi, Melissa. Do you have marketing arms in addition to grant/foundation support, or are all of your nonprofit partnerships rolled into one request? So that there may not be, you may not all have an answer to that, but and Terry, that one may have been directed at you because you talked about the 5 areas.
Yeah, so for our Comcast Rise program, one of the arms is getting a marketing makeover. But I would say if you were traditionally applying for a grant, right, or a foundation grant, what we talk about is through the program, and then you would include that in your detailed budget. of what funds are needed and how much, like the total cost would be, and then the percentage that you actually need or asking for in the grant. So ours, I would say if you need marketing, help, you would just put that in your overall budget when applying for the grant.
Melissa, do you want to unmute and make sure we're getting your question correct? That I might have paraphrased it too much.
Yeah, no, I think you've got it. I was just thinking there's some organizations that have a whole different person who does a marketing component, and it's not a foundation grant, and they may support you in both areas, or you may be more suited for one. And I could see how potentially all three, except for Burton, could have those arms. And so I was just curious.
And Melissa, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because yes, at Comcast, we actually offer our nonprofits some gifting for PSAs. So if you need that, that is something we could work and offer for nonprofits specifically only. So we would not be able to pay for if you're promoting it somewhere else, but if we are airing it, there's a process for that.
Anybody else have a answer? Okay. All right. Thanks, Melissa. So we have a question for Herbert, and I haven't previewed this question. So you mentioned doing projects with staff for community service. Is that your staff providing the expertise on small construction projects, or are staff working alongside? Or is your staff volunteering with our staff on simple projects like cleanups or painting? And this is from Lorraine McGuire from SAC, I believe, right? Lorraine, I hope.
Herbert, did that make sense, or do you need me to?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Thanks for the question, Lorraine. So generally, all that Terry mentioned, we're builders. We love to build, as I stated earlier. So if there's an opportunity for our team to provide our expertise on a specific project, whether it's a residential build or building a dugout for a baseball field at a school, we would love to engage there and work alongside the nonprofit staff, youth in the community, or all three. So definitely there's room for engagement on all fronts.
Super. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Herbert. Thanks, Lorraine. So from Isabel Bryan at Hope for Justice, the question is, what are your funding preferences for core versus projects grants and general operating funds versus specific programs? I
think I'll jump right back in.
Jump in.
Specifically for Turner, we definitely want to fund more so specific projects and programmatic expenses as opposed to operational costs.
Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I would definitely say, depending on what the request is for, right? Because I will tell you, we would never ever give funding that you could use, for direct services until COVID. And so for 2 years, I will say we were able to do that, but that was because of the pandemic. So I feel like sometimes things happen and we can flex, but then, they're going to go right back. So I would just say, depending on what the request is, it just needs to match within the constraints of our different grants or programs, which I think really helps, because if you can look at that, if it doesn't match, we will tell you beforehand.
Super. Naya?
Yeah, and I would say for Jackson, we have a preference for programmatic grants, just because it makes it easier to demonstrate impact. And I feel like our committee members prefer them as well when they're reviewing the applications. There have been some instances where we have provided general operating or unrestricted support, specifically during the pandemic, when there's a lot of demand for basic needs. that demand increased exponentially. So during that time, we were flexible. But I would say that that was mostly with our established partners who had like a suite of services that were aligned with our focus areas.
Burton, any words of wisdom from a development professional? No? Okay.
Just keep all the lines in the water possible. Keep fishing.
What? Oh.
Just keep fishing. I mean, don't be singularly focused. Try to go to a lot of different places.
I get you. I get you.
So sorry.
I love all these little colloquial things that you're saying.
I guess it's the weather. It's just, I don't know. You can see it out my window.
Very fun.
But yeah, just keep the line in the water and see what,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, don't, you know,
I mean,
know
unrestricted funding is extremely important to
it's
keeping,
extremely important. And, you know,
being able to have if you're able to have the programs, you've got to have that unrestricted support. So
that's right. That's right. I
there
think a lot of grantors want to come alongside your other supporters. That's what we found. And so you really got to show some progress before they'll do the first. I've seen most of them want to do the last instead of the first, but anyway.
So I've got a couple more questions in the chat from Dwight Johnson at Preston Taylor Ministries. What impacts are you looking for in grant proposals from organizations working directly with children and teenagers? And how would you measure or look for effectiveness in a proposal? And I think I'm paraphrasing here, but I think this is a lot of after school and enrichment activities in this particular, but youth serving nonprofits. I know, Herbert, you might want to jump in because you already talked about youth serving.
Sure. No, thanks, Terry. I think for Turner Construction, you know, we have a heavy focus on STEM and STEAM for our youth. So if your programs are focused there, you know, we're definitely highly engaged with the post-secondary community here in Middle Tennessee. So definitely if there's an opportunity, you know, to partner, you know, to give K through 12 students exposure to STEAM and STEM subjects, that's something that we're very interested in. And from an outcomes perspective, we're really looking at, you know, the amount of the hours. When you think about volunteer hours, whether it's our team going to engage with the students or, you know, we do a lot of work with the YMCA and we adopted Tusculum Elementary. So, you know, we have a team that goes to Tusculum on a pretty consistent basis and meets with their after school program. And we have just curriculum, if you will, that kind of caters to all ages and all levels, that kind of exposes the youth to like the construction industry and STEM and STEAM. So if your program is kind of geared towards those specific subjects, definitely give me a call.
Okay. All right, Dwight, you've got a phone call to make. Pick up the phone. That's what we already learned in our earlier answers to communicating and building relationships. Anybody else on the subject of grant proposals from organizations working with children and teenagers specifically?
I would say mine is not regarding the grants, but for us, we really support, you know, connectivity. So one of our programs, you know, with Internet Essentials is focused on, you know, if your family is eligible and you have children with the National School Lunch Program, and or if you're a veteran, and there's actually many other, if you fit the criteria. So with that, we are really always trying to make sure that an affordable way for families to connect to the internet is possible. So I would say that's just a slight difference, but under one of our pillars of connectivity.
Okay. All right. Oh, Nia.
Yes, I was just going to say, at Jackson, we've supported a lot of programs that provide more enrichment and support for students in terms of mentoring or tutoring. And a lot of students in our community actually need more wraparound support. And so there are organizations that are providing those services as well. So those are some areas that we funded to support students in our community.
Yes, and we funded a robotics camp. Sorry, thanks. Whenever Herbert was talking about STEAM and STEM. So that was really exciting with one of our partners.
I think the challenge in these wraparound programs, after school mentoring, tutoring, are, and I know this from, when I worked with the Library Foundation for many years, is showing how do you isolate the impact that your program makes, because children are in school and then you have the programs, and then so how do you that impact it is it's a challenge in terms of the reporting to get meaningful impact. All right, we have one more question. Well, maybe there's more than one question, but the next question is from Dara Bacon. She's with the ARC Tennessee and would like to know if the panelist would share more about previous funding choices and if they applied more toward new initiatives or programs that are already established in hoping to maintain momentum. That's an interesting one, Dara. Good question. Nia, you are unmuted, and I'm so sorry. Having an unusually spelled name, I should be able to remember this. Nia, you're unmuted. Would you like to address that question?
Sure, thank you, Terry. I would say that we tend to fund programs where there's this established track record of progress and success. So it doesn't mean that we've never funded new programs, but I'd say we tend to go with those that are more established.
Anybody else?
So
go sorry,
ahead.
Terry. No apologies.
All together now.
Okay, I'll be really quick. So ours, I will tell you, sometimes things happen unexpectedly. So we had an opportunity to fund one of our schools. And so we were able to work with Overton High School, and we were going to give 100 laptops to students. So anyways, one of the community partners, they had told us they were trying to open up a computer lab with a nonprofit nearby, and they were unsuccessful. Well, it was so exciting because, when they shared that story, we had a computer lab that we had wanted to open, somewhere in Middle Tennessee. And we did not know this organization beforehand, but because obviously our partnership with Overton High School and then learning about the organization Legacy Mission Village, we were able to start this partnership, fund their computer lab. We have funded them now for many years. And so I will tell you, that's where relationships come in. When we, had the meeting with Overton High School, we asked them, like, what is going on? What have y'all needed in your community? And when they shared that, we were so excited that we could, really provide that when they, someone else couldn't, and we were able to pick that up. So I would always ask, and just like Burton said, keep fishing, because, if it may not work with Comcast, I think it's really important that maybe it'll work with Nia Jackson or, at Herbert Turner, because it's got to be the right match. We all get kind of different kind of budgets and our verticals do, change. So don't give up, and know that, we all want to work together on the funder side too, because we want to see you all succeed.
I love that. Anybody else?
I'll just echo Terry and Nia, just, to Burton's point, keep fishing. If your program or nonprofit doesn't align with what, one of our pillars, more than happy to connect you with someone else in the community that kind of does community and engagement for a corporation that may have interest in partnering and collaborating around something. So like Burton said, keep fishing and stay positive.
Super. Burton?
I was just going to mention when I was doing some of this work at Lipscomb, especially the foundation work we were doing, it boiled down to impact. And so helping a lot of people. And so we really had to, we were trying to get our students involved in the community. And so if it helped a larger section of the population that tended to be more receptive, although to Nia's, I didn't say that right. Nia. To her point, yes, established programs, a lot of connectivity there, a lot of resonance.
All right. Well, you guys, I can't believe it's 4:15, but we are out of time. I can't thank you enough for participating with us today. The tips, just learning about your priorities, your company's priorities, and the great wealth of experience that each of you brings with you from your long-term careers. It's been really, really helpful to all of the people on the call. And we are going to let you guys go and have a little conversation with the folks that are assembled. But Terry, Nia, Herbert, and Burton, thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you'll come back. Their contact information will be, if it's not been shared in the chat, it will be in the follow-up email. I know they'll be looking to make all kinds of new friends from today's session. So thanks so much.
Thank you
Thank
all
you,
for what
Terry.
you're doing. You're
Thank
making it happen.
you.
So thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Wow. That was a lot right there. We covered a lot of territory, and I know there may be other questions, other comments, and so I would love to give you the opportunity to ask questions, make comments, and we can do that by raising our hands, I think. And if my team will help with that, I see so many friends on here. I just wish we could all be in the same room, but it's great to see you guys. Just any thoughts, anything? We've had some feedback from these before, from Meet the Funders before, that it's kind of nice to be able to process without, having the funders in the room once we've heard from them. Marissa Sweiston is right next to me in my little square, and she is our Chief Partnership Officer and handles most of our fundraising and a development professional. Marissa, what are your takeaways from today?
This was a really good conversation. It's nice to see everybody. Thanks for joining us. I think what we've all experienced in the last few years is that every year has looked different. Like 2020 had so many challenges that were specific to 2020. And then we thought some of those processes that we followed with our funders would look the same in 2021, and same for 2022. And what I have been thinking about quite a bit is just how that has not been the case, that relationships are more important than ever, because our funders everything is new for them every year in the same way it is for us. And so I really liked what Herbert was talking about, and Burton, and really everybody touched on it, but the stewardship piece, and really reminding ourselves and our staff and our team that we are responsible for and holding the investment of our funding partners, and that's a real gift, but it comes with some great responsibility. So I'd love to actually hear anybody chime in on like how you all are doing that, or what challenges you're having in terms of storytelling and reporting. We have this goal every year about, that at mid-year we'll do a report on everything that's going on. And it's crazy because everything changes so often right now that what we're doing in mid-year isn't always what we're doing at year end. So that storytelling piece and keeping our funders updated can be quite a lift. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I think Dara has her hand up.
Sarah, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
Marissa. Nice to meet you, Marissa.
Nice to meet you too.
I'll just shed one light that we've really had success with in documentary style videos. We actually talked about this during the development and fundraising class at CNM this week. And so a lot of the community we serve is the disability community. And oftentimes internet access can be a barrier, but also just the accessibility of being able to speak on demand. So the ability to share a video or, re-record as many times as you want to get your message right and feel confident in what you're saying. But we use an app called Life in Videos, and it allows us to take that question by question, and then it compiles, and it's reasonably priced. So that's been one way, but we feel like videos for our population too, we also like to read captions instead of listening to the audio. So that's been really helpful. So just thought I'd share that, but I also had a question for you, but I can wait.
Well, Dara, I want to thank you for that, because I think that is something we talked about at the last Meet the Funders, that we kind of have this gift to be a little more casual now, that everybody's Zooming and all the things. So quick videos, it's such a good reminder. And on top of the thousands of things Catherine has on her plate, I'd love for us to think about moving forward too. But what was your question?
Yeah, so as the panelists were talking, I keep coming back to a question in my mind, like maybe I should have asked this, is how do you get that set number you want to approach them with if you don't have any exposure to how much they have funded projects for in the past? So do you ask for 10? Do you ask for 70? Do you ask for 100,000? And, you know, maybe the application isn't the right time to ask. Maybe it's in the cultivation part of the relationship. So I just wanted to know maybe how you phrase that, how you broach that topic of.
It's a really good question. And this actually came up too during our last Meet the Funders. We talked a lot about what budget do you present? Do you show all of your numbers? Like how much information and transparency do you give? And I think it was Michelle from Amazon who talked about they just would like to see the whole program budget or even your general operating budget so they can see where their investment would fit in. So I feel like that takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it for you. You can just, be very transparent in a one pager with like, here's what we're spending this year. Here's what our need is. We'd love to ask you for all of it, but if there's a piece of the pie that you're willing to give, then there's that too.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think it's that is part of the relationship building. You can't ask how much will you give until they know what they're giving to, and you've kind of got them, seeing your vision and excited about your vision, and then I think this is always where we get shy. Maybe is we actually talk about the dollars, but I think you can just say, ask what their grant ranges are. In most places will tell you, they'll have a range. And probably you're going to build a relationship. You don't start off with, I need the whole 100, but so it's a little bit of a dance, but I think being as transparent and as just, here's our need and here's what we're going to do when we raise this money and the change we're going to make in the world. Yeah. Great question, Dara. Good to see you.
Hey, thank you. Yes, thank you both.
All right, you guys, I know other people have questions and comments. Don't be shy.
This is
all right, Melissa.
Okay.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi. This is a great session as always. Thank you. Very, very informative. One of our challenges, and I have a feeling this may be the case with other nonprofits too, is that we are honestly short-staffed. I mean, we don't have a fundraiser right now. We're missing a programs person, and I don't know when that's going to change. It's not that we don't have the money to hire someone, but not enough money to hire someone apparently. So just kind of curious, I mean, how do you build those relationships and keep people informed and do all these things that we need to do when honestly, we're running on empty just because we're just trying to get the work done. So how do you balance that? I mean, eventually we'll hire people, but.
Well, so your question is that you need to pay higher salaries in order to get people to work for you? And how do you communicate that to a funder?
Partially that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's operational dollars, and that just doesn't come unless you have the relationship already. I think that what I'm asking is, what are some of those shortcuts where in the interim, how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep funders engaged when we don't have the staff to do the communications and marketing side of it?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. How do we keep up that communication, that relationship? And yeah, well, Marissa is a master at this, so I'm going to ask her to jump in, because I was thinking as they were talking, I always have this intention, I'm going to write that note or send that email or this text, and then it falls off. So I'm probably not the best poster child for a great example, but Marissa is. So,
well, master is an exaggeration, but I'll take it, Terry. Thank you, Melissa. I think simplicity is key. And if you can fire off, if you can spend 25 minutes, and I know you probably don't even have that most days, we're all super strapped. But if you can spend 25 minutes crafting an email that isn't designed or anything special, that includes like, what would our community look like without Bookham? And what are you doing right now? What are you working on? What's changed and what are your struggles? Because I think that's what we hear from funders too, is it doesn't have to be flashy and perfect and just so intense. It can also just be, you know, a couple points. And I don't know if you have a good set of funders already, but reaching out to them and maybe adding to that email list, you know, maybe 5 to 10 potential prospects that, you know, they're getting your reporting and emailing, just, you know, even though they're not yet on board. So that would be my thought.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, my friend Melanie has her hand raised. Hi, Melanie. Melanie
Hi.
Barnett from Room in the Inn.
How are you? Well, I just wanted to jump in there. We work with the homeless, and the past 2 years have been very difficult, just keeping our head above water, but we also had to halt people coming into our facility and serving with us, which was around 400 a month. So that was significant. We've started ramping back up, which is great. But one thing that we tried to do, stay connected on a very candid level. And as we were going through pictures, or if we had photos, or if some of our participants asked about our funders and different things, we would text them a photo just to kind of like, hey, I found this photo of you when you were in the cafe, or doing those kind of things, which is it's something you can do at the stoplight. I'm not suggesting to text and drive very often, but those are the kind of things that are easy. Little touch points like that build the relationship a lot. And that's something that we've tried really hard to continue and just stay connected. People want to serve and they want to give. And I think that's one thing we forget about is, you know, it's hard and it seems difficult, and you don't, you know, you're not asking for yourself though. I have to remind myself of that often, is I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for the community. And we do, everyone on here is doing good work and people want to be a part of that. So I think just that boost of confidence, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. You know, I hear from CEOs, executive directors, I'm hearing from development people a lot today, just about how taxing and tiring this whole thing has been and is. And the demand for us, for our services, right, is only gone up. And how do we stay resilient? That's really, really important. I think we're about out of time, but Robin, did you have a question? Robin Nobling? You're muted.
Nobling, like no
Nobling. Thank you, Robin.
like no jewelry. No bling.
Cute.
So yeah, I think one of the things that just came to mind with this, we're embarking, we're really recovery focused. We're NAMI, we're the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we're a peer-to-peer organization for people with mental health issues and their families. And so we really want to focus more on recovery than disease models. And we've got some collaborative efforts going right now with both Vanderbilt and Belmont OT, and some new things we're doing. But it concerns workforce and getting people over to workforce, getting them, you know, from the bedroom to the living room and then over to a supported employment program is a really big leap. But I really thought, when I heard, I think it was Herbert talking, that we would love to just start a conversation for partnership. I don't have an ask right now. We are building something that we think will come along in about 2 years, but I'd love to have an employer that is involved with this, because mental health is definitely at the forefront during the pandemic. And so we've definitely, like the rest of you, we've been very busy. So I would just, you know, it wasn't so much that I wanted to ask for dollars. I wanted to ask for relationship around this, you know, to get an employer perspective. We've got the perspective from the individual. We're in the middle, and we love that connection. And we have been working with the Department of Mental Health, Wellbeing and Employment folks, and Goodwill and American Job Services. So this is just something I would love to see as a collaboration, and let them give insight into how this could work.
Thank you, Robin. I think that's right on target, and it reminds me of the example that Nia gave about rebuilding Nashville together, and then when Jared came on and said it started because we had a relationship around the work that, and for them it was the work of helping fix the homes so that to avoid people being displaced, and for you it would be we hear workforce development in almost from almost every funder, and I think we're also at a point where we're rethinking, where employers are rethinking who they hire and are going to be potentially more open to creative partnerships from an organization like NAMI or Progress or some of the
Right.
other ones. So thank you. All right, y'all. It's 4:31 and you have hung in there. I give everybody a round of applause for hanging in there with us during this thunderstorm. If you saw me doing this, it's because it was raining so hard here. I couldn't hear what you guys were saying. But it's so good to see you, and I appreciate all that you do, all that you bring to our community, to our sector, and hang in there. And we're going to try to do more things like this where we can fill together, even if we're all coming at it from a different Zoom room. So thank you, and thanks to Catherine, our mastermind, always on our special events, and Marissa and Abby D. You guys were great in support. So hang in there, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Terry.
Stay dry.
Bye.